Finovate showcases cutting-edge banking and financial technology through a global conference series featuring short-form demos and thought leadership. Now, the conversation continues on the Finovate podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Finovate podcast. Joining me today, we have a special guest who's known Finovate for many years now, John Waupsh. Absolute pleasure to have you on the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great, man. Yourself?
Yeah, doing pretty well. So for people who haven't heard of you, can you start by giving us just a little bit of background on where you're coming from and kind of how long you've been involved with Finovate events?
Oh, yeah. Let's see. 2005, I think, was when I started in fintech. And I started a company at the time called First ROI to work with banks and credit unions and help them with their online presence, essentially help convert online shoppers into new accounts. And why the name First ROI? Really simple. I chose two names that I knew bankers loved the most. They seem to use first in everything, and who doesn't like ROI? So we had a pretty interesting platform that we built that served banks and credit unions, helping them through everything from search engine optimization, paid search marketing, digital account opening, their websites. And then around 2010, we merged that with BankView, which is now known as Kasasa.
No, so I mean, one of the things that's fascinating about your experience is you've sort of been through several cycles, and you've seen obviously several fintech cycles, and obviously also growing the company and the product from the early stages all the way through to quite advanced. Can you talk a little bit about that journey and sort of going from this is an idea that I have up through now all of a sudden we're a big deal company? That's a leap that not a ton of people have been fortunate enough to make.
Oh boy, there's a lot to talk about there. How do you want to break that one? Do you want to break it down from a product perspective or from a company growth perspective?
Because maybe more from the company growth perspective at first, because I think that's an area where we see, from our perspective, we see a lot of people struggle.
Yeah. So thankfully I was along for the ride with Kasasa, which, if you don't know, I mean, today they work with maybe about 900 banks and credit unions. You can Google them at Kasasa. But basically, it's branded financial products that are usually quite unique in the market and marketed through the institutions. Basically, they solve a need that the local institution has, which is usually core deposits or loans. And the products are targeted towards retail customers who, quite frankly, are looking for something to help solve their financial problem. And it's, millions of consumers today use Kasasa checking accounts, savings accounts, all sorts of loans. And it's been pretty interesting. And it was a very fun ride. I think really what we found as we grew was Gabe and I really trusted each other inherently, and finding more executives that also trusted each other to that same degree, in my opinion, I think became really challenging. I don't want to say impossible, because we did find it, but it became something that was unfortunately very expensive trial and error. And not to put it all on the executives, but to be quite frank, anytime you have a challenge in a company that that relates to growth or product or whatever, I mean, ultimately it does kind of begin and end with the executive in charge of that line of products or that line of sales or whatever the case may be. It was funny. I was talking with another entrepreneur at Finovate. We were having dinner together, and he was sharing, the fact that he's at a certain size of employees. You get that Dunbar number of 150 or whatever the number is, and every consultant kind of comes out of the woodwork and tell you the way that you're supposed to now change your company or orient your company for success or efficiency or whatever it is that whatever the word is that you're going after. And I personally think that there's no like correct answer on how to, and it may be because I've never seen it, but how to appropriately align your company for the $1 billion exit that everybody wants. Instead, I think what we found, at least with Kasasa, was your company is going to go through various growth fits and stops and starts, and oftentimes feel like a roller coaster, much like maybe it did as a startup. That necessarily to me means that the company and everybody in it must have kind of baked into their consciousness a sense of flexibility, which is oftentimes very, very difficult for a company that's an organization. Usually by the time you reach a certain level of success, much of your organization is built in the world of following sort of a templated scheme. If I turn this crank, then this is what I do. and and don't throw anything new, anything in any new products, any new processes, any new third party, whatever. Don't throw any new thing into my world, because this is what I do and we do it very effectively, and we're built for this efficiency, and this is what we modeled at the end of the year so that we could hire this number of people for the next year, or whatever the case may be. That model of sort of predetermined outcome, input and outcome, is very, very important at certain stages of your company. At other stages of the company, there is a need for welcoming in perhaps an entirely new process or an entirely new product into that predetermined template. And in my opinion, or at least what I've seen over the last 20 years inside of an organization that's gone through really strong growth periods, is that at those times, sometimes that's where your machine breaks. And having the people who have a mindset of solving a problem, of being flexible, sort of a predilection or a predisposition towards continuous improvement, is not something that you typically see in the banking space, but is something that I think pays massive dividends. And having executives or managers who are more bent on solving problems than building out fiefdoms or whatever the case may be, that can be something that's challenging to find early on. But when you find those people and those managers, those leaders, those are the people who help kind of condition the company for continuous growth and continuous sort of change that inevitably needs to happen as an organization matures.
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, there are some major shifts from a macroeconomic scale, which would have impacted the growth there and the curve that you all were on. But I think even outside of those, understanding that the idea that you have at the outset is not necessarily how it's going to come to fruition at the end, and that you're going to have to make adjustments. You're going to have to look at things and re-examine things, and the way that you've done things before is not the way that you necessarily will have to do things going forward. And having an executive team that really understands that and who's able to shift along with that and even just kind of stay inquisitive, I think is definitely an area where we see a lot of people struggle, even people who are clearly brilliant people, who have great ideas, who bring good technologies to the table. When it comes to turning those technologies into an actual company, that's a totally different animal. And so I think that's an area where there's a lot that that we could pull from this example here. I want to make sure we talk a little bit about your latest project as well, because we were talking a little bit about this at Finovate Spring last week about kind of how Nerve sits in the ecosystem. Can you give us a background on, well, first off, I guess a high-level overview, what Nerve is, and then also kind of talk about how the experience that you've had has really led you to come up with this next new idea.
Thanks, man. Yeah. So I laugh because I think depending upon different people I spoke with at Finovate, Nerve was kind of different things to different people, but usually it's
Sure.
it's so basically Nerve is when we launched a couple of years ago, Nerve was and looked like a neobank or a niche neobank for initially musicians, and then we expanded to creators. And that is exactly how we launched. And the reason why we launched that way was we wanted users. We needed to understand were we actually solving the problem we thought we needed to solve, which is part access. When you talk to creators, less than 20% of them actually have a business bank account. And primary reason for that, as you hear, is there's too many barriers. It's too challenging. It's not a digital process. It requires minimum deposits, and I don't have $5,000 just to keep on an account. Otherwise, I get feed $15 a month. Yada yada yada. And so it's part access, part borrowing, accessibility at a decent rate, decent price point. It's part payment flows. I don't get paid fast enough. All these challenges. So we were like, let's start first with the neobank, which is kind of core to solving all of those problems, and then we're going to build a platform around it to resolve our distribution challenge. So it basically, we were very clear, all you had to do was be in banking for the last 20 years, last 5 years even, to understand that CAC is a problem for a neobank. And so the last thing we wanted to do was chase people around the internet and say, hey, are you a creator? Download our bank. So we built out APIs to enable an organization that works and serves creators to use Nerve very efficiently to make payouts to their end users, to effectively to bank them in a white label fashion. And because we wanted our distribution model to essentially be B2B to C. So very similar to Kasasa, where Kasasa, distributes these end products through its network of banks and credit unions. We want to do the same thing with Nerve. So whereas instead of financial institutions being our distribution point, we believe very strongly that it should be platforms that creators already use. So today, what we look like is a white label embedded banking platform that companies in the creator space can use to essentially offer business banking solutions to their end customers very quickly, easily, and basically in a way that generates them profit per user. But we also discovered that our platform itself is really for any type of micro business. So we've been talking with organizations that are in construction, believe it or not, in like landscaping and other sorts of micro business fields, where these organizations were, really interested in working with a BaaS before, and I say before as in back when money was cheap. And they had spoken with BaaS organizations as in this idea of being involved from hey, I want to help make a loan to this subcontractor or whatever the case may be very easily. And that seemed really interesting during the sales process. And then as time went on, what ultimately these organizations discovered was they would need to build out a team of fintech engineers and fintech product people and people who understand return to ACH levels and should I let somebody I just gave a debit card, should I let them change their address 24 hours later or whatever the fraud issue may be?
Right.
and they realized, goodness gracious, there's a lot for me to actually build out to do the simple thing that I was hoping to do, to be involved in, factoring receivables, whatever the case may be. And so what we realized we actually built is this platform that kind of enables any organization that doesn't have a group of fintech engineers or fintech product people or whatever, or doesn't want to invest in that, to easily get to market with a white label embedded banking, lending, payments thing. And within weeks, instead of maybe a couple of years of dealing with raw APIs at the bank level, and then sort of building your thing on top and all of the risk affiliated with it. So in many ways, we kind of look again like a SaaS oriented organization that is working with larger companies that already have sort of predetermined customer base who wants to keep that customer, either get that customer more engaged, drive engagement, or oftentimes what we're talking about is just the fact that by getting them banking with you, now they're sticking with you, so that customer stays around quite a bit longer. So that's. So I don't really know what to call Nerve today.
Yeah,
we're this embedded banking platform that's a white label way to offer financial products and services to your existing customer base.
Yeah, well, and I like the emphasis too on kind of making sure that you have that talent pool, that you got the right team there, because I think a lot of people fail when it comes to bringing a new product to market because they don't have the proper talent, those fintech specific engineers. And I think this is an area where companies recognize, if I want to do something well, I need to get this talent on board. But that talent is expensive. There's a lot that comes with it, and not everybody's able to go out and hire that kind of person on a full-time basis. And so looking at how you can kind of eliminate that pinch point should allow a lot of people to start to expand their ideas of what they're capable of. And so that's, I think, what really, struck me about it. But to your point, everybody will kind of hear their own thing as a result of what you're saying. They'll kind of get their own impression. And of course, it is still one of those things like we were talking about earlier, where who knows exactly where the future will take this, right? And you have to maintain that flexibility and see what opportunities come to you, which is going to obviously just be fascinating to watch.
So my business partner and I have been attending Finovate since 2007, 2006, whatever.
Yeah, I think so. And I think you guys are the only ones who won Best of Show trophies 10 years apart as well, which is another because you got one in I think 2008 and then again in either 2018 or 2019, right?
Yeah, we won. We in total I count 4. So we won 2008 Checking Finder, 2010 or 11 was Money Island, which you may be forgetting. That's the financial literacy product, and that was I wasn't on stage for that, but that was a product of ours, and that was Felix Brandon Lloyd was on stage for that dynamic individual. I did not want to be on stage with him because I would look like an idiot. He's a powerhouse on stage. And then Kasasa in 2013 or 2012, and then Kasasa Loans in 2018, 2019, whatever.
Yeah.
But I will say that, like Al Bundy, I'll talk about the 4 wins till the day I die. I'll take credit for all of it.
As you should.
But my point is, my business partner, Ben, has been, he was attached at the hip with me on all that first ROI stuff, on all that Kasasa stuff, and pretty much all of the Finovates. So Ben and I have been, knee deep in product in fintech for quite a long time. And I'll tell you, one of the funnest things we do is actually talking with an organization who thinks that they want to be like, offer a product or service or thing to their creator, to their name your business, and help them kind of come up with, maybe even a different way to use our platform than what we had thought of before. But a lot of it is actually, inspiration or whatever the case may be from other things that happen in fintech. Most of it coming from the Finovate world, whether that's the actual conference itself or the work that you do here, or that Julie pumps out on the blog. There's so much knowledge that comes from your organization, and there's no way that we'd be able to do what we do without the work that you guys do. And I know that all you hear is complaints from me on on the stupidest stuff regarding a Finovate conference, but I got to tell you, man, props to you and of course the original Jim Braney on keeping this thing rocking and rolling, because it's definitely the lifeblood of fintech.
Well, I appreciate that. And I swear I was going to end the conversation anyway. And it wasn't just waiting for you to say those things, but we are actually out of time. No, it's been really fun for me to kind of follow your story and to see how the tech has evolved, and of course, how the entire industry has evolved. And I want to thank you again for taking time out of your day to chat with me. This has been a really fun conversation. And I look forward to seeing how Nerve evolves. Look forward to seeing you again at a future show. And of course, hearing the litany of low-level complaints with the understanding that the big picture is something which has done amazing things for a lot of people. So it's all about the context, right, John? That's what we come back to. But anyway, Absolutely. Thank you again. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
The Finovate podcast is produced by Informa Connect in association with Provoke.fm Media. Check out Finovate.com for information on Finovate's upcoming shows and to learn how you can get involved. The discount code Finovate Podcast will save you 20% on tickets to all of our events. And you can email us at info@finovate.com for information on sponsoring, speaking, or demoing. Thanks for listening.